Welcome to the first episode of That's Alt, where we get a group of jerks together, talk about movies, TVs, and video games. I'm your host, McBallz. With me, I have KelleyCK.
Hello.
Marcus, TheOnlyTigger.
What's up?
And Jordan Wade.
Hey, hey.
Today's topic is Resident Evil 6.
Resident Evil 6.
And I guess let's just dive into this. What do you guys think of the game? Do you like it so far?
There's parts that I like. It's kind of here and there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mix. It's a little bit of a love-hate relationship. Love some of the slow parts, you know, when it's got the horror thing going, and then when the action gets a little bit too confusing, kind of hate it.
So I jumped into a few parts, and I've seen some parts of the Leon campaign, but I hear that that's the most popular campaign.
Yeah, that's the one that we went through first.
Yeah.
She and I actually played together, ran through Leon's campaign. It seemed to have the greatest balance as far as what they were trying to do with the series, and I can see why, you know, a lot of the people that are diehards of the franchise, you know, if they hated the actual overall game, they actually kind of liked that part. But definitely caters to the people that jumped in, like starting at 4 and 5. So.
Yeah, I liked it. The game overall is just way too ambitious. I can tell where they were going with it, but it just wasn't executed properly. I think there's just a lot they're trying to jam into it, and I kind of liked. I hear a lot of people didn't like the 3 different campaigns. I sort of liked it in the fact that you could play with different people if you wanted to. Like, I played Leon with Marcus. I could play another one with another friend, but the fact that they all intertwine together is a problem, because then you end up replaying certain parts that you got through another campaign. So I don't really understand that whole thing. I get the intertwining of the story was kind of cool, but not when you're replaying certain parts. That was just a little bit of a overkill, I would say. So
it kind of worked out in some instances with the boss fight, but then you ended up having, you know, people, you had the possibility of being stuck because they would try to work it into where you were playing with possibly other people online at the same time if they were playing online. So you would meet up at, say, like a boss fight for Jake's side of the story, and then also Leon's side of the story. You would meet up at the Ustenek boss fight, and then you have the potential of, you know, either A, having a really good time of, you know, going through that boss fight with 4 people playing, or getting stuck with somebody that didn't know what the hell they were doing and just dying repeatedly and just kind of loathing that whole section. So it had its ups and downs, but the intertwining of the stories would have been, I think, cooler if it would have just been kind of like side-by-side action, like through like a section of the story rather than like just a boss fight, like a centerpiece. I think it probably would have served its purpose a little bit better as far as meeting through part of the story, because then you didn't feel like you were just repeating one big set piece over and over again.
So those intertwining parts, so you would have like 4 players at a time fighting a boss, or?
Yeah, in some instances, like there was the intertwining of the stories when we were going through Leon's story and Helena, and then Sherry and Jake would meet up with you at the Ustenek boss fight, or we were also going through, what was it, the Deborah fight, and you would meet up with Ada. So that would be a 3-person boss fight.
Cool.
So it would have its moments where, you know, like it had potential to be really fun and give you kind of a different experience of like what that was through each character's eyes, but it was really just that you jump in from a different point, but you really overall just repeat the same boss fight over and over again. So it's more, you got more of the sense of, I got to do this again, versus, oh cool, you know, like we get to go through this part of the, you know, game with other people, and then after that you really don't ever see that person ever again. So it kind of felt lost rather than going through a big section of the story.
Yeah, definitely, like that. And that's what I was saying, like you feel like they had a good like way they were going about it, like you could see where they were going, it just wasn't executed well. And the fact that most people only like Leon's, that's another problem. Is I just feel like Chris's was lost, so was Jake's. Jake's is rarely talked about. I mean, for them, that was their excuse of just bringing Wesker in another way. I was watching a video with the developers, and of course, every single time they do a new game, that's what can we do with Wesker? Right. What can we do? So because they didn't want to bring him back, because he kind of was shot in the face with a rocket the last
kind of
game.
already come back from that.
Yeah, so they decided, oh, well, he's got a son now. So that was their whole reasoning with that. So he's able to do cool things like Wesker eventually. It's kind of the big secret in the game that he's Wesker's son and he's got the antibody for the virus and everything. But I just think the other two were lost on it. Because I know when I saw the trailers, you keep seeing Leon's story most of the time. And so I was really excited about it because I was like, finally, they're going back to horror. They're going back to all the scary stuff in the first games. But it's just kind of lost after you play that one. I haven't even finished the other two because I haven't really been that excited to play them. But, you know, then they kind of get you because you want to play Ada's single-player campaign. So...
And that in the sense, you know, it kind of feels probably the most like Resident Evil games just because she's by herself with nobody else around. So you have to play that one single player.
Yeah.
And, you know, the general consensus is that Leon's campaign and Ada's feel the most like Resident Evil. If anything, Leon's feels a lot like 4, but Ada's probably gives you that sense of dread of being by yourself.
Yeah. In the first few.
Like the developers, when I sat in on the panel at Comic-Con, they were saying that they wanted to take each part of the campaign into like a different style of horror. So they had like 3 different fears that they were modeling the game around. You had Leon and Helena's campaign that was modeled after the fear of, you know, like the unknown, not knowing what's out there. And so that's how come you were going through like the mansions and you know, just kind of like trying to discover like why all this happened. Chris's and Pierce, theirs was a lot bigger in scale, but because they were going into a battlefield with like no I guess you know, knowledge of like what was going to be thrown at them, it was the fear of, you know, like being overwhelmed, like facing overwhelming circumstances. And then you had Jake and Sherry's that, because he's carrying, you know, the antivirus for what happened in the game and like why everything breaks out worldwide and everybody's trying to get at him. His campaign was the fear of you know, being pursued. Okay. So they were going through like 3 different types of fears to try to model the game and try to convey that. And while trying to do that, I feel some of it gets lost because you really don't get that without like having had that conversation or having somebody tell you.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. So.
I mean, and that was just one of the things that drew me to the game when I heard them talking about it. I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. Let's see how they pull this off. And playing through the game, you kind of see where that gets lost. It's a cool idea, cool concept, but gets lost.
So I was checking it out, and it seemed like to me that the controls still felt clunky to me. Like, I almost feel like they haven't evolved much since Resident Evil 4. Like, I know you could walk and shoot, and you could go on your back and shoot, but in a way, I almost feel like they should have just revamped the entire control scheme. If they were going to go for a more action-oriented game, like Gears of War, maybe they should have just revamped the control scheme. I mean, does it still feel outdated to you guys, like control-wise?
Definitely. You can see like they have cover now where you can hide behind stuff, but it doesn't really work out that well. I mean, you can like shoot on your back, which is nice, but it's still, compared to updated like modern shooting games, it's definitely not up to par. So I think if they were going that route, you're right, they should have revamped the whole thing. And I just feel like they the way that you have your items, like the way you get items, I thought that was annoying. Like when you have health, you have to sit there, put it in your case, and like make sure to have it on you, because unless that you have that, you have to go back and you can't pause the game. So you're in the middle of people trying to kill you, trying to get all this health into your like whatever they call it. I don't know.
It's like 6 different slots that you have for like the different weapons, and you have to combine all your health, get them into your ready to use inventory from your regular inventory, and then that's limited. So I mean, it's not so much that everything's, you know, like the playing Tetris in the menu screen like it was before, trying to make sure that everything fits. It's just like, you used up 6 slots, now you got to go back and micromanage and throw it back in your regular inventory so that you can use. So you end up like combining 3 plants to get like 6 little health pills that you pop. And
so they're not in papers anymore?
They're on papers. He's not smoking joints anymore.
They've upgraded the pill form?
They've updated that. Okay. I will say I liked the fact that when we were playing online, you weren't having to share ammo. If we had our own separate ammo, that was cool. So we weren't having to worry if I was just taking all the shotgun ammo or something.
Each person basically, like, if I killed somebody and they dropped ammo, I could pick it up and she could also. So we both could go and just like scavenge ammo from everywhere.
Whereas
so
you're sharing in the other one.
Whereas the other one is just like, Sheva, stop using my ammo. in 5, and it's, you know.
Well, actually, I have a question on since y'all played online. Do you feel like there was enough for both of you to do at the same time online, or do you feel like there was something where one character could just take over and someone could just be a pedestrian and just watch as the other person's doing everything? Like, beyond just opening doors together or doing puzzles together, was there enough for 2 human beings to play the game together?
I think that was another issue, was sometimes we were both doing stuff, but other times I was either waiting around or he was waiting around for us to get to a ladder or a door. And I think that's where they really should have been improving on the co-op, because that was another thing that was in 5, where it was basically just helping someone get up on the ledge or open a door for the other person. And while that person's fighting off enemies, the other one's kind of just waiting around. So.
Right.
Or forcing both people to be at an area to open a door before you can move on.
Yeah,
you got a lot of that too.
That was annoying.
I know, like I traditionally play like a lot more action shooter games, so I probably took over a lot, like as far as going through like and wading through like a lot of the zombies, just killing stuff, and so that we could move forward. She spent a lot more time probably with like watching my back and making sure that nothing was coming out, or going through like more of the puzzles, because you played as Leon, so his was a little bit more like taking the lead in the story anyway.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
When the parts where we split up, it was just it felt really underutilized as far as like forcing you to go out on your own and you know, have that sense of fear that they tried to convey in it. We just we didn't really get a lot of what they were trying to do with the game.
Yeah.
It felt very mixed. The controls, as far as, you know, like the team actions, it was just like, oh, hey, what do we have to do here? Oh, I gotta press circle, you have to come here. And,
Yeah.
you know, we partner up to get up on a roof, and then that's it. She stays on the ground, runs around away from something, while I try to get to like wherever a key is. And
I will say though, the parts when we were under the church, those were better because we were both doing stuff when we were separated. But I know there's parts in Chris's campaign where I'm separated. I played with another friend of mine, and most of the time it was one of us waiting around for the other one.
Okay.
So that, I feel like they struggled with that a lot more. In
that
the other
probably
ones.
felt like the best puzzle in the game, because we were actually
Yeah.
aiming at, like, there was a mirror puzzle where you had to aim your laser sight at, you know, at the other person's side of the screen to actually like get the puzzle to work. So in a sense, it was like we were actually working together to get
Yeah.
through the puzzle versus, you know, doing two separate things on our own. So that's probably like the best puzzle that they had as far as like the old Resident Evil style.
Yeah, and that I feel like was a lot like the temple parts in 5, where I will say, even though 5 wasn't one of my favorites, I think they definitely used the co-op better. There was a lot of teamwork involved, and that's what I love so much about it. I mean, I played the game until like 10 in the morning when I first got it. And this one, I've only played Leon's. I've barely gotten through Chris's and Jake's, because there's just not much in it for me now that I'm done with Leon's.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
As far as recommending the game goes, because you know there's different audiences. There's the classic RE 1, 2, 3 players. Like that's probably me more so. I've played all of them up to 5, but I'm not really big on the action direction. Like I said, I think if they wanted to go full out action, they should have just revamped the controls. But as far as recommendations, like, would you recommend it for a classic RE player? Would you recommend it for a co-op player? Like, who would you recommend this game to?
I definitely recommend it for co-op, just because you know, all of the campaigns minus the special one that you unlock, which is Ada's, it's all campaigns, so you can play with somebody. So I mean, if you really want, you know, like a game to play with your friends, and even if it's online or even local, I mean, it offers you that. So I think it'll be a fun playthrough, especially if you jumped into the series with 5. I think you'll really enjoy it. For the hardcore Resident Evil fans that, you know, die hard since, you know, 1 and went back and played all the, you know, like the remakes and everything, if they thought that Resident Evil was betraying them with what they did in 5, they're probably not gonna like it.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with the fact that they've had different developers since 5. So there's a big reason it's going in a different direction. So I would definitely recommend it for co-op as well. I'm a hardcore Resident Evil fan, and it's fun for the co-op aspect. That's what I like so much about 5. But for story and just the pacing and stuff, it does get annoying. So I think for most people like me would just enjoy the Leon campaign the most and want to play through the other ones to get to Ada's. So.
Okay. Sounds about right. Yeah.
Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
Our next topic will be The Walking Dead. We all saw the season premiere this past week. And joining us again, we have KelleyCK.
Hey there.
Jordan Wade.
Hello, hello.
And Alex, BossNessMonster.
What's going on?
We gotta push just a little bit more.
Do whatever you gotta do to keep this group safe.
So, what did you guys think of the premiere? I personally thought that I'm kind of amped for this season, as opposed to last season when I spent like half the time looking for a little girl in the forest. So I'm glad there's some, development going on here, and they're actually progressing a bit.
Yeah, I will say I was actually excited for this episode. I have been pretty bored during the farm arc where they're just kind of looking for the little girl and nothing's really happening. So I'm excited for that. I think they're taking a nice turn with this, and I know everyone who's read the comics has been super excited about the prison arc. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I found second season to be all right. I didn't watch the second season until it was all aired. So for me, there wasn't that kind of long lull between the first half and the second half, so I was kind of able to go straight through it. Now, with that said, the whole looking for Sophia was kind of a drag. But I felt the Shane arc was awesome, so I was a little worried about going into this season because the Shane arc was such a big deal for season 2, watching him trying to transform into this like horrible person that you couldn't trust anymore. And so I was worried going into season 3. I haven't read the comics, so I've only heard about the prison arc, but I was worried, but then watching the beginning of season 3 and seeing how to start off with a big bang with, the budget being spent, and I'm a little worried that they might have blown their whole budget on that first episode, especially with the face being ripped off and Psycho Mantis showing up and everything. But I'm really excited about this season. I'm just curious to see where they go with the baby, and also with Michonne and Andrea off on their own thing. And I'm assuming they're going to be meeting up with the governor, which I've heard about but know nothing about. So I mean, this season has a lot of potential. I think it could be pretty big, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about the third season, especially after we went to Comic-Con. They showed the big teaser trailer for the third season, and I read the comic, so I'm a little hyped up about it. I was real happy about this first episode of this season because I saw the most black people on that show ever, but it had to be in a jail. I was kind of upset about that. I'm like, what's going on with that? But I'm real happy. Like, I was upset a little bit because I wanted to see a little bit more of Michonne and Andrea, but I'm pretty sure that the following episodes coming up, they'll get more into that. So I'm pretty hyped about this one.
Yeah, I think it played well. I think it's kind of like the title seed. I think it's planting the seeds for what's happening. I feel like they also definitely, I felt like the episode was a direct response to complaints about season 2 and the fact that there wasn't a lot of killing going on for a while with them being on the farm. So right off the bat, you have zombies being killed left and right. You just see a well-oiled machine, it seems like, with all the characters, and that was really enjoyable. I was really glad to see like they've been improving over the last few months. Even weaker characters like Carl and Carol are actually kind of holding their own now. So
right, and we see a little love blooming between Carol and Dale, so we'll see where that goes. But
I'm hoping they do spread the budget better this season. Like you said, for the second season, you could tell the budget was holding them back.
Right.
They'd spend, I swear they probably took like 10 hours of footage of Daryl walking in the woods.
Yeah.
Like, they had to go cheap, but, they did so much this first episode. Like, all that, prison cleansing, locking down the courtyard, exploring the prison. That was great.
Yeah.
And
I am worried though, like that we had like obviously there's gonna be a lot of zombies killed in the first episode because they're going to this penitentiary where there's just walking dead everywhere. My worry is that they've killed off all of them, and now we're going to be sitting at a prison with only like a few zombies around, and so the budget will have been kind of used up. Because I'm assuming in the town where the governor's at, there's not any zombies around, so obviously you're not going to have heavy makeup effects going on there. I mean, I know nothing about that arc in the comics, but it seems like there's a possibility that we might not see as many zombies going forward for at least the next few episodes. But that's just guessing. But of course, we do have Michonne and Andrea still kind of traveling along before they eventually meet up and go into that town. So I mean, there's still other routes they could take to showing off zombies. But as far as the prison goes, I think they've killed off a good portion of them. We'll just see zombie bodies kind of just laying around.
Yeah, because if you read the comic book, do you realize that the zombies aren't the only monsters in this world?
Right.
And there are a lot of things and people that are far worse than these zombies. So where you may not see that many zombies, you may get a whole different evil in this place. So Since I've read the comic, it's a lot of things that I'm really waiting to see how they're going to do with this season, if they're even going to, go that route. So it's just with the governor, his whole story. I'm pretty interested in seeing how they're going to, translate that onto the show as well.
Well, that's kind of like the beauty of like the zombie genre and like post-apocalyptic genre in general, is that the initial fear is the fear of what you don't understand, which in this was zombies. But now they're kind of grasping how they operate and how you can get around them and kind of monitor the whole situation. The greater threat becomes man himself. And so that's where the writing needs to really step up big time, and the acting needs to, continue to progress, because I think that's where the show is going to really shine, if they can really show the fear and the atrocities that mankind can perform on each other, as opposed to just the zombies. Because obviously the zombies are sort of one trick, and we've seen what they can do, and still the kill shots are great. But there needs to be greater depth, and like you said, that's where the show, and you're saying in the comics, is where it kind of progresses to.
Yeah, I think they definitely gave you a hint of that with, my friend pointed out the tagline for this season was "Fight the dead, fear the living." And so you kind of wonder at the end when you see the other people that are living in the prison, like, okay, this isn't going to be just about zombies anymore. This is where they're going to improve. And especially for people who haven't read the comics, that kind of gives you a hint of what's to come with the season. So it'll be interesting. I think they're definitely priming T-Dog and Beth for bigger stories finally, because it seems like he actually had more lines in this episode than he probably had all throughout season 2. So
1 and 2.
Well, I actually have a small theory on that. There was the showrunner said before the season that a series mainstay was going to end up being killed off, and so I'm fearing that maybe T-Dog's being amped up so we can kind of have this emotional connection to him for them just eventually off
They're
him.
buttering him up to get him.
Right, because I can't. Him or Carol is who I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So that's my prediction. One of them two is going to go.
Yeah, I could probably agree with that too, because also being that I've read the comic, watched the show, you see that certain people's roles have kind of changed. Like certain people existed in the comic that aren't in the show, and vice versa. And certain people in the show have died that are currently still living in the comic. So that's why some people are getting upset, because they feel like the show is straying away from the comic. But if you keep everything the exact same, you're going to know what to expect. You won't be surprised. Like with the second season, with the whole Sophia thing, that wasn't in the comic. So when that happened, I was excited. I was like, oh man, that's a nice little change, little twist. I appreciate stuff like that. So if you're going to change it up, at least make it worth it. And like with the way they've been doing it, to me personally, I feel like it's been worth the changes. Okay. And I'm real comfortable with those.
That's good.
Were you good? Were you cool with the Dale change in season 2?
Somewhat, but I want to see, because with him gone, it's leaving like an opening for something that happens later on in the story. So I wonder if they're going to keep that piece in or take it out with his demise from the second season. So
Yeah. And I guess I've read like the first 11 issues of the comic. I'm not that far into it, but there's a character called Tyrese who's kind of a big deal, at least initially, from what I've seen. And he's not present at all in the series whatsoever. And he's actually kind of a cool character. And I feel like maybe Daryl is starting to take on some of the characteristics that Tyrese had, because Tyrese has spoiler out there, kind of a love interest with Carol, and now we're kind of seeing that on the show. So I don't know if you feel if that's going in the same direction or.
A little bit, but the more that I think about it, I can kind of see how that works out, because Tyrese, his character in the comic, when they get to the prison, that's when his character really develops from stuff that goes on in that prison. So if that's the case, then I want to see how this is going to change Daryl. But also, if you saw the big Comic-Con trailer for Lethal Online, there was something else that happens at the end of that trailer, another person you see. So I want to see how that's going to fit in too with the show.
I got another good one for you. This one's a little bit less depressing and a bit more hilarious, if I do say so. What's this other time?
I guess we can kind of segue into the Walking Dead games on Xbox Live and PSN. I know you guys have been playing those.
I went through the first 2. I haven't gone with the third and fourth chapters.
Yeah, I've gone through all 4 chapters.
And how's that playing out for you?
I think it's based more off the comic universe. So obviously my understanding of the comic universe for Walking Dead is not as vast as the understanding for the television universe. But the video game has been really impressive through the first 4. There's going to be 5 episodes total, but for the first 4 episodes, it's been really impressive because it can take the story into directions that a TV show can't go, like some subject matter. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody because they're in I believe it's the second episode. There's kind of this big twist that I would spoil if I mentioned what the subject matter was. But regardless, it can go into deeper and darker territory because it's a constant challenge of your morality because you're getting to choose what you want to do with the main character because you're playing this character named Lee. Who in the beginning, the game starts off with him being kind of in a police car. He's arrested, and you don't really know any backstory behind it initially. But eventually, he's being taken away while the zombie apocalypse is going on. They don't know it yet, but they hit a zombie, and he gets wrecked off the road. And then you eventually come in contact with this little girl named Clementine, and he kind of becomes her caretaker throughout the series. And so the whole time, the game is challenging whether you want to reveal stuff to Clementine or hide it from her. Do you want to keep her naive? Or do you want to show her the realities of this new world, and so that way she can prepare herself? So the whole game is about that. There's just the Clementine aspect, and there's also the aspect of dealing with other people around you. And so I feel that the game can explore things you can't get in the show because it is interactive. And also it can go into darker territory because it's mature rated and it's a video game. And if those who want that are going to seek it out, as opposed to a show, you can't show the same sort of graphic violence or the same sort of graphic subject matter because it would offend certain audiences, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it does get a little bit more gory in the game as opposed to the show?
Yeah, it's darker. I mean, I would say it's gorier, and I mean, I don't know if so much more gorier as in blood, but as far as like just making you kind of cringe and be like seeing certain people die, like there's points where you're having to choose who lives and who dies, and that's much more harder to take than watching a show and seeing another character do that, because you're in the process of, do I save this person I've gotten to know, or do I save this other person because I can shoot a gun, and it's like you're kind of having to sit there and choose between the two. So I feel that's you get a greater emotional connection in the game, and I applaud TellTale Games for being able to create such a worthwhile experience.
That sounds interesting, just because I've only seen like the trailers on it, so it's exciting to see that they're actually taking this into a good direction where it's actually playable and people like it, and it's different from the show, so that's pretty cool to see. Yeah,
I mean it's something else that's also I like is this transmedia narrative, because it goes along with the comic universe, but it's not going over the same things you would experience by reading the comics. You're with characters that are not mentioned in the comic books, or at least from what I understand. The only connection is Glenn is in the beginning of the game and Herschel's in the beginning of the game, but beyond that, these are characters that were created specifically for the game. So you're getting to experience their own stories that it's not a rehash of what you've read or what you've watched.
Mm-hmm. You're not dealing with the whole Rick and his crew thing. It's a whole different group.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Yeah. And because the first time I ran through it, I tried to play it as, politically correct, try to be neutral guy, and I saw the results because certain things also change because your actions in the game transfer on throughout the different chapters. So what you do, it carries on. So then the second time I played as, angry black man, YOLO, I'm rolling solo for Dolo mode, and just making every horrible, bad decision ever. But it's, like I said, I like it. They tie in, like he was saying, you see tie-ins from the main characters like Glenn and Herschel. And like I said, because this takes place before the whole, it happens like right at the beginning of the whole zombie apocalypse. So nobody really knows what's going on, and like the environment is real quiet. Like I said, it's worth the play.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, it's different from just the movie-based video games that come out that are basically you playing through the movie or something. Right. So I'm glad they actually took this in a different direction, where it seems kind of like a game like BioShock or like Infamous, where you kind of get to choose different things that happen and you kind of create your own game by your choices. So that's pretty interesting.
And also the choice is not always apparent either. Like you have like 3 or 4 different, it's a conversation tree type thing, and you have 3 or 4 different options, but you also have a time limit for choosing those options. Like there's a time bar that goes down, and if you don't select anything, you choose not to say anything. So that's another option. But it's not immediately apparent what affects the choice you make will have. So you may be thinking you're choosing the right choice and being politically correct, but you might also say something that might offend another character in the background. So it's not something like, okay, I'm going to play the good guy, so I'll just say the good guy thing the whole time.
Yeah,
it's not there. So you just choose what you feel right there, and your choices be damned. So yeah,
that sounds legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how Walking Dead the series develops. I'm sure it's going to be a good ride compared to season 2. But,
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm hoping, I haven't read the comics, but I'm hoping Lori gets killed off at some point. Pretty sick of her character at this point. I like that like you see her son and, Dale not even talking to her anymore. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's going, I don't know. And you see with Herschel, the fact that she's opening up to him and telling him, if the baby's a zombie or not, kill us. That was interesting.
I found that part really interesting in the first episode of the season because it's going into the depths of humanity. Wondering like, am I going to be able to take care of this baby if it comes in the world, or if it doesn't make it out of me, is it going to kill me from the inside? That's like a really dark fear that I never really thought about when I was watching that story arc. So.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us this week. We will be back next week with discussions on the Wii U and Borderlands 2. Please feel free to follow us on our Twitter at twitter.com/ultness. Also visit our website, ultness.com, and check the details below. We have some other good links for you to follow and check out. And until next week, stay classy.
And wipe front to back.